Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining me. Please put in the chat where you're coming from, and today we're going to talk about travel, where you've gone, where you're planning to go, where you have traveled and you wish you never went. We'll talk about whether you traveled by train, whether you traveled by plane, like the plane on my shirt, whether you've gone on a road trip. So definitely put in the chat where you're coming from. And I'll tell you, I just went to Michigan. So I live in Massachusetts and my best friend lives in Michigan. So I took a plane. I had to wear a mask on my face because we're still obviously in this pandemic, but just in the plane, I had to wear that. And when we went into like inside places, and we traveled to the Great Lakes. She lives near Detroit, Michigan, and we traveled to the Great Lakes. To one of the Great Lakes, Lake Huron, which was three hours we drove there. People in Michigan, it's a really big state, so a 3-hour drive is very short to them, while I live in a very small state, Massachusetts, and anything more than like a 2-hour drive is a really long drive. So we went there and we stayed for a couple days. We slept in a hotel, and what else did we do? We went to see a lighthouse, and we went to see something called the Lumberman Monument, where you can see there's a monument that is there to honor all the lumbermen that worked in upstate Michigan. I think from the 1800s until the early 1950s. And you could also see there's like a river that's coming out of Lake Huron where they would cut down all the trees and they would have all those trees kind of floating down the river. So that's one of the places that we went. And we went to the beach and we went swimming. So that was my trip. My daughter actually just went to a camp for 2 weeks, and that was a sleepaway camp, and she slept in a cabin, and that was still in Massachusetts. So that was about 2 hours from our house. So I would love it if we can have like a conversation where you're sharing with me where you've gone, whether you went by plane, where you'd like to go. I can tell you that I am planning to go. I was planning before the whole pandemic, I was planning to go to Spain because I've been studying Spanish. And when the pandemic happened, well, of course, I didn't go to Spain. We, as in the United States, couldn't go anywhere. We couldn't go to Europe. We still cannot go to Canada. Where my friend lives in Michigan, you can see the bridge to Canada, but you're not allowed to go there unless you work in Canada. So no one is going across that bridge. If you're new joining, please let me know where you're coming from. Again, we're talking about travel. So please let me know where you're coming from and where the topic is travel. So please. So I was planning to go to Spain. I've been to 4 countries. I have been to Canada, which is like bordering United States, right? I've been to Finland, and I've been to Costa Rica, and I recently, 4 years ago, I went to Mexico. So those are the 4 different countries I've been to. I've been to many states in the United States. To name them all, but I've been to like Colorado, Utah, California, Florida a number of times. Sometimes I would go by plane. Sometimes we would drive different places. So many different ways that I've went. Most of the time now, my travel is by car and to go camping. But I have traveled by train. One time I took a train to Michigan that was almost 24 hours. And it wasn't too much fun because the trains, like some of the trains have sleeper cars, but I didn't have a sleeper car, so it was very uncomfortable. And it took a long time. Another time when I was much younger in college, I drove to Michigan. And actually, there's 2 different paths from Massachusetts to Michigan. One is to go below the Great Lakes, and that takes 20 hours to drive to Michigan. But if you cut through Canada, it takes 16 hours. Right now, we couldn't do that because we're still not allowed to go to Canada. But if you cut through and drive above the Great Lakes to get to Michigan, it will take you 16 hours. And I did that probably 3 or 4 times when I was in college, because as I said, my best friend lives in Michigan. So if you're new joining, please let me know where you're coming from, and please hit the like. We're talking about travel. So today you'll learn some different vocabulary that has to do with travel. You learn about, the kind of vocabulary you use at the airport. You learn about travel on a train, travel vocabulary, driving, different things that you would use when talking about travel. So I'm hoping that you'll put in the chat where you're coming from, and that we can hear where you've gone, where you have traveled to, where you're planning to go. So did you ever visit another country? Yes, Vignesh, I have traveled. I think, Vignesh, you're coming from India. Please remind me of that. I have traveled to 4 countries. The first one I ever traveled to was Canada, which is like bordering United States. I traveled to Costa Rica. I did that in college. I love Costa Rica. It's so gorgeous. And I have traveled to Finland, and I have traveled to Mexico 4 years ago. And before the pandemic happened, I was planning to go to Spain because I am trying to learn Spanish. That was my next place to go, but that's on hold right now. So those are the 4 countries I've gone to. Vignesh, if you want to let me know if you've been to any other countries, let me know in the chat. I'd love to hear from you. So the topic is, if you're just joining, is travel. And please let me know in the chat where you're coming from. I'd love to hear where other people have traveled. My father once did a trip around the Southwest United States, and he just lived in his camper. He had a car, and he had a small camper that he built himself. And he would travel to different national parks, and he would sleep in the camper, and he did a lot of photography. He'd take pictures during the day, and he did that for 6 months after he retired. So that was one of the trips that he did, like a really road trip, and sleeping in this small camper that he made. And then one time I did a trip with my father. We traveled to some of the national parks. It was a week. We stayed in hotels, but we traveled to the Grand Canyon. We traveled to Bryce Canyon, some of the beautiful national parks in the United States. In the Southwest is where we did that trip together. So if you are just joining, please let me know where you're coming from in the chat, and let me know places that you've traveled. I'd love to know places that you have gone before, or places that you'd love to go to. If there was some place you were planning to go, but it is put on hold because of the pandemic, let me know about that as well. Let me just take a sip of water. So Vignesh, you said, I'll talk to you. I'm from India. That's what I thought. And I'm living right now in the state of Tamil Nadu. I'm sorry if I said that wrong. So you live in Tamil Nadu. From India. Thank you for joining. So what places have you traveled, Vignesh? Or if you have not traveled, outside of India, or India is a huge country, places in India, please let me know. I'd love to hear about that. As I've been saying, I'm planning to go to Spain. I'm also planning to go to Colombia. I have a friend from Colombia living here in the United States. And I said to her, next time you go to Colombia, I want to go with you. I also would love to go to Panama. I have a friend from Panama who next time she goes to Panama, I'm hoping to be able to go and travel there with her. I know I've spoken to many people from India, and that's definitely on my list. I have never went abroad. Learning English from Brazil says, I'm from Brazil, and I'd like to go to the USA. So that's awesome. There are many wonderful places. And Antonio, thank you for joining from Spain. It's nice to have you here as well. Antonio, one of the places that I was planning to go to before the pandemic was actually to Spain. And I met many people on Hello Talk, and was kind of like starting to make a plan to go to Spain. That's still in the future. Now, finally, we can go to Spain, and we can go to Europe. We can't go to Canada as United States citizens right now. But I think right now I'm going to put that on hold, because when I've been like listening to stories and listening to the news, I understand that places in Europe are still not completely open, and there's a lot of restrictions. So I think when I go to Spain, I want to wait until things are, I don't know, back to a little bit more normal than they are now. So I'm kind of still putting that on hold. And for me, like, I'm just planning, I went to Michigan just to visit my friend. I went there for a few days, and I'm planning to go camping, but definitely Spain is on my list. As I was also saying, I spoke to many people from India, and many times people ask me if I plan to go to India or if I've been to India. That's on the list someday to go there. But right now for me, one of my goals is to get really fluent in Spanish. So I'm trying to visit countries that Spanish is one of the main languages. So Spain is definitely on the list. Colombia. I'd love to go back to Costa Rica, Panama, and those countries. Mexico as well. I went to Mexico 4 years ago. So the topic is travel. So if you have gone to different places, I'd love to hear in the chat where you went. Please hit the like button as well. I'd love to hear places that you plan to go or places that you wish you never went to. I have traveled many different ways. I have gone by plane. So in Spain, we would be delighted if you would visit. Yes, definitely. I definitely want to go to Spain. That, like I said, that was the next place I was planning to go. I think my plan was to go in like December of 2020. But, as I was making that plan, we had the pandemic hit. But that's definitely a future plan for me. So Bignesh says, I did not travel anywhere outside the country, but I have traveled inside in my country, like Delhi, and inside the district of Kodakalan. I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong. Is it Oti Kodakalan? And all those. So tell me different things that are in those districts. I really am only familiar so much with Delhi. I never visited places. I had been visited those other places in the state. Okay, so thank you for sharing. Like, what kinds of things did you like in those places? What could I see if I went to Odi Kodakalan? Like, what would be the place that I would want to see? And Antonio, tell me in Spain, what places would I want to go to? Give me suggestions, because I definitely would like to know, like, where, my big thing going to Spain is obviously to work on my Spanish, but it would be awesome to kind of like know, which places are the must-see places in Spain. And learn English. You're from Brazil. That's definitely a place I'd love to go as well. I know you said you're planning to go to the USA. What part of the USA would you think you'd like to visit? Let me know. I've been to many places. I haven't been to all 50 states, but I would definitely recommend some over others. I loved California, especially San Francisco area. I love where the Grand Canyon in Arizona. Kadeen, I'm not sure if I'm saying your name right. You're from Nepal. Thank you for joining. The topic is travel, places that you've been, places that you're planning to go. I actually have a friend from Finland, which is one of the countries I've been to, and she actually spent a lot of time in Nepal. She does missionary work, and I think she was like working with helping a school in Nepal. So she would go back and forth from Finland to Nepal. I think she's back in Finland because she's much older. She's almost 80. But she spent a lot of time. And I actually work in a school in the United States where I have lots of students from Nepal. So thank you for joining from Nepal. Again, today the topic is travel, places you've been, places that you like to go to, how you got there, whether you went by plane, did you go by train, did you drive there, did you ride your bike? I have friends that have rode their bike across the United States from Boston to San Francisco. And they had like a little trailer thing that they attached to the bike, that they had their tent, or sometimes they stayed in hotels along the way, and they were able to ride all the way from Boston to San Francisco. So that's another way people travel, is by, bicycle. So, I mean, how did you go? Did you hike somewhere? And my daughter is just coming over. She just actually went to a two-week sleepaway camp. And it was two hours from our house. You want to say about your camp?
Yeah, it was really fun, and I enjoyed going there, but the car ride was really long.
Right. So where we live here, anything more than a 2-hour car ride is really long. And where my friend in Michigan lives, a car ride of 3 hours or less is like short to them because it's such a big state. So if you're just joining now, the conversation is about is about travel. So where you've gone, where you're planning to go. So Katerina, what about camp? What did you like most about camp?
I think I probably liked the farm the most because I got to pick up a lot of cute animals and stuff like that.
And what kind of animals did they have at the farm?
They had chickens, goats, horses, sheep, and they did have a baby snapping turtle once.
Did they have pigs?
No pigs.
No pigs. So yeah, so the camp you slept in, what did you sleep in, tents, or what did you sleep in?
We slept in cabins, actually.
Okay. So, and you went, what else did you do besides going to the farm?
We did archery, we did paddle boarding and boats and stuff. We did hiking, we caught frogs. It was really fun.
Okay, awesome. So Antonio, do I know any cities in Spain? Yes, I'm horrible with names, but let's see. Of course, Madrid, Barcelona, which is like, I know that Barcelona is like a big area, and then there's this area that I'm not sure, I can't remember the name of it, but there's these beautiful like cliffs, and the cliffs go down to the ocean. And there's also, I think there's like caves in this area, but I don't remember the name of it. Cartavella or something. I'm horrible with names. But that was one area. I'm trying to think of other areas. I know there's like the area in the south where there's a lot of like places where the people from, I think the architecture from like Africa, when the Moors or whatnot had lived there. And now my mind is blank about the whole like Spain. So Kenan, we have planned to go camping near a lake and hope to have a lot of joy. That's wonderful. That's what Katerina was, just camping by a lake, but it was camping in a cabin. Sometimes we have camped in tents. Whenever I camp in tents, it ends up raining a lot and we get wet. So I actually have a camper, and when we go camping, which we're going camping next week, we'll be camping in a camper by the ocean. So yeah, Katerina was just camping by a lake. You saw her. She joined us for a couple minutes. If you're new here, the conversation's about travel, so please hit the like and please let me know where you've traveled or places that you're going to. I'm trying to think of places in Spain. My mind is going blank. Antonio, remind me if you could, like what places in Spain, what cities, because I watch a lot of YouTubers that do teaching Spanish, and they're from different places. And now all of a sudden, when you ask me this, my mind is going blank about where were the places that I wanted to go to. Let's see. Vignesh says, thank you for the question. I will tell you, if you visit India, Tamil Nadu place in the Oti may be a place that will be a cool climate. Well, that's good because I don't like if it's too hot. Oh, Andalusia, that is where I think Andalusia is where, let's see, I think it's this Alex that makes these videos for teaching Spanish. I believe he's from Andalusia. And there's also Professor Juan that says he's the best looking professor for Spanish on the internet. I'm trying to think where he was from, but it wasn't Andalusia. Andalusia, I definitely have seen and would love to go there. I've seen a lot of videos from there. And then Kandash says, last time when it was raining, we slept in a car. Okay. I mean, I actually did that too. Like we went, one time I did this trip and we had gone from like Massachusetts over to Niagara Falls, but we were on the United States side. And then we went into Michigan and Wisconsin, and we slept in the car. Like we basically put the seats back in the back, and we took sleeping bags and slept in the car. That's a good idea. You probably won't get wet. We slept in a tent by the ocean, and when the storms come blowing in, there's no way to really stay dry in a tent if you're camping by the ocean. And so we had water in the tent. I remember we went to get this big tarp and we were putting it over, and there was lightning coming down, and rain and wind. And we were out there trying to stake down this big tarp. And my daughter was inside the tent. My son and I were trying to like put this huge tarp over our tent, and afraid we're going to get struck by lightning, but we're trying to keep all that water from coming into the tent. And then we got a bunch of like towels. We took all the towels that we would have for the ocean. we took them all and we tried to sop up all the water that got into the tent. And after that, I decided not to camp, at least by the ocean, in a tent again. Because no matter what, when a storm comes through by the ocean, it's going to be severe. So if you are new here, the topic is travel, where you've gone, where you're planning to go, how did you go? Hit the like and let me know. So what's the difference between the US side and the Canada side for Niagara Falls? The view is very similar and things to do are similar. You can go on Maid of the Mist, which is like a boat ride, which brings you really close to the falls on both sides. You can go on this thing where you kind of walk underneath the falls on both sides. They'll have very, very similar museums. People say the Canada side is better, but when I went with somebody that couldn't cross the border. So we went to the US side and they were all the same things to do. Walking under the falls, going on the Maid of the Mist, you can do on both sides. The view is very similar. You're just you can actually be on one side and you can see the people on the other side. You can see the people in Canada and vice versa. So I'd have to say they're both very similar. The falls, I think, are to your west. And so people are on the north side in Canada, or people are on the south side in the US, and you're looking in the same direction at the falls. So it's pretty much the same. Some people have said they like the Canadian side better. How expensive is it? I want to say Vignesh said, I was told about this place. It's located on a mountain, and maybe some of this study will be visiting the districts and states. Yeah, we can talk about mountains. I definitely have traveled to mountains. I do want to talk about how expensive. I haven't gone to Niagara Falls for a long time, but it can be expensive. I think one of the most expensive things is like where to sleep. For me, I could drive from where I live in Massachusetts to Niagara Falls is about 8 or 9 hours. There's no way to really get there by train, because you can probably get to Buffalo, but then you probably have to get off and catch a bus. You could fly there from here, but it's cheaper probably to go by car from where I live. And I would say hotels are expensive, but there's like Airbnb where you can rent people's apartments or houses that might be cheaper. So let's see. I don't know how to ride a bike. Okay. But once upon a time, my brother maybe thought that you should ride this. Okay, but you didn't learn. So you can, probably they say it's never too late to learn how to ride a bike. My son loves bike riding, and he goes on bike rides for like 50 miles, which I don't know if that's kilometers. Maybe that's 75 kilometers. But I mean, the thing about bike riding is that it can be dangerous. He actually did have an accident last month, right before he graduated, and he fractured his ankle. He's okay now. But the biggest danger, I think, with bike riding is other cars, right? He didn't get hit by a car, but he was trying to go around the car and he toppled over. So I do like myself, I like bike riding, but I don't go very much anymore. I generally will drive to places. If it's really far, I'll fly. Like I said, I just went to Michigan and I flew there. I have taken trains, but in the US, trains are not as plentiful as they are in other countries. Did you have experience for camp? And I am going camping next in a week. I'll be camping in a camper, but I've camped in tents. I've camped where I just slept under the stars. That's awesome, except for the ground is kind of hard, and there are things called mosquitoes that bite. But if you're new, please hit the like and please let me know where you're coming from. We're talking about travel, and people are asking about, travel to the mountains, travel camping. I have traveled to the mountains. I was born in Colorado, which Colorado, we have almost the longest, I think it might be the longest mountain range in the world, at least above water. It goes from Canada and it goes all the way through South America, and it's called different places. Where I was born, it was called the Rocky Mountains. And I have traveled in the Rocky Mountains. I've not camped there. I've stayed in cabins or hotels. So I'm planning to go camping by the ocean in Massachusetts. There's a beach called Salisbury Beach, and I have made videos about that. So if you check my videos later, there's a video called Camping, and you'll be able to see. Actually, one of my friends had a drone, and he took a drone video that's in it. So you'll be able to see the campground where I'm camping in that video. And that is one of my favorite places to go because there's like a river that we can kind of camp by, and then you can walk over to the ocean. And my cat right here wants to say hello. This is Ross. He's right over here. So if you like Ross and you haven't liked the video, please hit the like. So let's see. I will be camping in a camper, and my camper, I attach it to my car and I tow it. And then I will bring it to the campground and I will kind of back it up and into the campsite. And so it's like a kind of like it's like 15 feet long, and it has a roof, and then it has 2 beds that fold out. And so that's what my camper is. I had some campers that you kind of cranked up, so it was flat, and you cranked it up and it went shh. And so then when it went up, then you would pull out the beds, and it would have 2 beds that pulled out. And then the table that you would eat on would then fold up, and you would put cushions on it, and that would become a bed. So we had that kind of camper that was called a pop-up because you would crank it up. But that one got really old and it broke, and it would no longer crank. So you crank it, but it wouldn't go up anymore. And then after that broke, I bought a tent, but I got wet sleeping by the ocean, having storms come in, rain came in, wind blew, and rain got into the tent. So I decided that I didn't want to camp and get wet by the ocean again. So I was able to save money, and I was able to get this camper that is hard on the outside and is about 15 feet long. And it has, I basically connect it to my car and I drive to the ocean, and that way I can have the beds pop out and I stay dry. So let me see, someone has joined, and I'm not sure, it's Rishad English. Where are you from? Let me know. We are talking about travel, and hit the like button too. We're talking about travel, places you went, places you're planning to go, places you wish you never went. Please let me know. Again, so Vignash is asking about Spain. That's my plan, to go to Spain, as well as go to Colombia. I have a friend in Colombia, a friend from Colombia, so that would be awesome to go with her because she would be able to know places to show me. But I definitely want to go to Spain as well. I have another friend here in the US from Panama, so if she goes back to Panama, I would like to go with her. It's always nice to go someplace where there's people that are from there that can show you around. And I went to Mexico a couple of years. I met a friend on a website called Pen Pal World, and we practiced on video chat for a year. And I got to know her and her family, and she invited me to go to Mexico. And I spent 10 days in Mexico. It was actually like before New Year's Eve. So I spent New Year's Eve 2017 to 2018 in Mexico and did all the things. Like, I'm not sure if Antonio, you're still there, but we ate the 12 grapes at midnight. That was one of the things we did. They had fireworks on the beach, and we did some other things that they do in Mexico. I'm not sure exactly all the things, but one of the things was those 12 grapes, one for each month, and you're supposed to eat them really quickly without choking and say a wish or something. So how is Mexico for vacation? I love Mexico. I spent half of the time, or more than half the time, in Acapulco. My friend was from Acapulco, but they work in Mexico City. So I flew from the US to Mexico City, then to Acapulco, and spent probably about like 7 days in Acapulco. And there are about 8 beaches there. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. And then we drove from Acapulco, which was about a 4-hour drive, to Mexico City. And we went to some different places in Mexico City. I love Mexico City. There are more museums in the world than any place else except for Paris, I think, in Mexico City. So Vinash is asking about my childhood days and if I ever camped. So I did go camping. Let me just take a sip of water. When I was a kid, my mother brought me camping. And what else? I went to sleepaway camp like my daughter did for 2 weeks, and I slept in a cabin. And I also went camping in tents with my mother when I was a child. Kanash is asking about, do Mexicans speak English? Not a lot of them. But more and more Mexicans are learning English because it's the best way to get good paying jobs in Mexico. A lot of companies want their employees to speak English because it is a global language. So I would have to say there is a good number, but I got lost in Mexico City. So I was in Mexico City, and my friend and her daughter was like around 7, and they were going to go ice skating. And I was wearing a skirt, so they said I couldn't go. So I thought I would just walk around, and it was a big plaza, but I decided to kind of go down a side street, and I got lost. And then I was trying to ask people in Spanish, because I couldn't find anybody that spoke English, how to get back to where I was. And it was difficult. I did finally figure out where I was supposed to go, and I found them. Unfortunately, my cell phone did work in Mexico. So my friend was calling me, said, I'm kind of a little bit lost, but it's okay, don't worry. And I did actually find my way back. But so Mexico is a country, but there's also cities. So there's Mexico City, which is the capital of Mexico. But Mexico is the country that is in between the United States. On the bottom is Mexico. And then if you go all the way down, then you start having Central America. And I don't remember, I'd have to look at a map, what is the very next country after Mexico. If somebody knows, please let me know in the chat. But Mexico is like right under the United States and right under Texas and Arizona. I think I'm looking on my map in my mind. I'm trying to think. But basically, it comes down like this kind of, I think, and it goes all the way to the beginning of Central America. So if you're new here, we're talking about travel, places you've been, places you'd like to go. How did you go? Did you go camp? Did you camp? Did you stay in a hotel? Did you take a plane? Did you go by train? What did you think of those things? Let me know in the chat, and please like the video if you have not already. So let's see. Like I said, when I was a kid, I did go camping. I went like 2 or maybe 3 times to a sleepaway camp, like my daughter, if you had seen. And I also went camping with my mother. Bignesh says, if I tell about my country of India, may have visited the state of Kerala and Andhra, maybe it was, so those are some places that would be nice to visit, you're saying? I'm not sure if I said them wrong, I'm really sorry. I was talking to one of the YouTubers that I've done some videos with, Anand, and he told me he noticed that it's hard for people in the United States to pronounce places in India. So I'm sorry if I have pronounced them wrong. How cold is it in Boston? Well, right now it's summer and it's 21 degrees. I can see, I have this like kind of television that tells me 21 degrees Celsius. It's summertime. But in the winter, it gets below 0 degrees Fahrenheit sometimes. And what is that? It's below, I get very confused when it comes to Celsius, but in the winter, it gets very, very cold. It goes below freezing. And, you know, it can be very cold in the winter. We get a fair amount of snow here. And speaking of that, travel in winter. Some of the things that my son has done is camp when it's cold out. They call it freeze outs, and they go camping in tents, right, and sleep outside when there's snow on the ground, when it's below freezing. So that's another thing. Maybe some people have done camping when it's cold. Vinash says, because already I have saw your previous videos, you created snowfall videos. Yes. So how was the snowfall in your country? So we have had record amounts of snow. I don't know about this past year, but sometimes we've had over 100 inches of snow in Massachusetts. I have no idea how much snow we had this past year, but we've had record amounts. We usually don't get much snow before December. So usually it's Christmas time, and we will have a song about I'm dreaming of a white Christmas, but it will be still green outside. And after December, we will get a lot of snow. So that's what it's like where I live in Massachusetts. There's other places like Buffalo, New York, where it snows every day in winter. You never see, if you look up, you never see the sun. But where I live, you know, you could have some days. I remember a Christmas when it was warm enough to go out in shorts and a t-shirt. It was like 74 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't know what that is in, well, right now it's 69 degrees Fahrenheit and it's 16 degrees Celsius, 21 degrees Celsius. So it was that warm one Christmas day. That's crazy and fun going camping in the snow. Yeah, so I think it's a bragging thing kind of to say, oh, I camped when it was, you know, 10 below 0 Fahrenheit. And somebody else says, well, that's nothing. I've camped when it's 20 below. I don't get it, but apparently that's a very popular thing among scouts, is to camp when it's freezing, and they call it freeze outs. I don't get it, but that's a thing that's popular among some people. Scouts, my son is in scouts right now, and my daughter, well, he's actually going on to college, but my daughter is now in scouts, and they have what's called freeze outs. So if you're new, we're talking about travel. So please let me know where you've gone, where you're planning to go. Hit the like button. Let me know where you're coming from. If you haven't told me where you're coming from, that would be awesome. I'd love to know that. I said the next travel that I'm planning to do is camping, which will be still in Massachusetts, but by the ocean. And as I've been saying, I'm planning to go to Spain. I'm planning to go to Colombia. I'm planning to go to Panama eventually. Someday India. I've talked to a lot of people from India, and that's definitely on the list. But right now I'm focusing on countries that speak Spanish, because that is the language that I'm trying to learn. So let me know where you're planning to go. How did you go there? Did you drive there? Did you take a plane? Did you take a train? Let me know. I'd love to hear. I know I have traveled by train, and that really wasn't very fun for me. It wasn't very comfortable. Vinesh says, sorry, ma'am. Oh, I'm not sure what you're saying. I'm not sure what you mean by that. If you can let me know again. If you can say that again. Raphael, I'm sure. Raphael, you're from Brazil. Thank you. I'm not sure. Is it Raphael? Am I saying that right? Thank you for joining from Brazil. I already had another person from Brazil learn English from Brazil. So thank you so much. What kind of food do you usually prefer on vacation? So that depends. If I'm camping, I do a lot of cooking, right? I cook my own food, and we'll do a lot of I'll do some hamburgers kind of thing, because that's easy. But I also have, in my camper, I have a stove, so we can do mac and cheese, we can do spaghetti, we can do barbecue chicken, that kind of thing. If I am someplace, when I just went to Michigan, each night we did something different. We did Chinese food one night, then another night we did pizza, and then another night we did what was called typical American, where you can just order burgers or steak, mashed potatoes kind of thing. And those are the kind of things that we did. We mostly went to restaurants when we were on vacation, when I went to Michigan, because we stayed in a hotel and there was no place to cook our own food. But for lunch, we ended up making sandwiches. So we bought some sandwich meat and some bread, and we bought vegetables. We're trying to eat healthy. So we bought these different vegetables that we cut up: carrots, broccoli. I think we had tomatoes. And so we tried to eat that, and that would be what we did in the morning and for lunchtime. And at supper, we went to eat in restaurants. So what breakfast did you have this morning? So this morning I had toast. I make my own bread, and I make a healthy whole wheat bread, and that's what I had. All right. So, you like that my pet? My pet's name is Ross. We actually have 4 pets. We have 2 cats and 2 bunnies, which if you've seen many of the videos, you might have seen those. Trying out American food and culture. So American food, people ask me about that. I guess I would say that would be the hamburgers and hot dogs, the mac and cheese. What else? Macaroni salad, potato salad. And steak, stuff like that is what I would say is the typical American food. The restaurant we went was called Mama's Kitchen, that we were calling the American food. But we have all kinds of restaurants here. We've got Thai food. We have Indian food. We have restaurants that have Ghanaian food. We have restaurants that have Panamanian food. We have restaurants that have Mexican food. So all the different countries, you will find some restaurants, depending on how big of a city that you're in the United States, you'll find food from all over the world. So when we were in Michigan, since we were there for just a few days, we had Chinese food, which is not the typical Chinese food you'd find in China. It's Americanized Chinese food. Basically, a lot of people from China came to the United States, and they basically kind of changed their recipes to be things that would appeal to people in the United States. And when you actually see, if you see them eating food in a Chinese restaurant, the families that own the restaurants, they are not eating the food that they're selling. They are eating what's their typical Chinese food. And I had an uncle that spent a lot of time in China and told me that that food is way different than the food that you find in the Chinese restaurant. So if you're new here, we're talking about travel, places you've been. I know, Raphael, you just joined. What places have you gone? Have you traveled outside of Brazil? Are you planning to? Were you planning to go someplace? I know I was planning to go to Spain before the pandemic, and that is put on hold. So let me know places that you've traveled before, places that you're planning to travel. And how did you go there? Did you go by plane? Did you go by train? Did you drive there? Did you camp? Did you bike ride? I was talking earlier, telling about how I have friends that rode their bicycle across the country, and they stopped in different places along the way. They actually wrote a blog on the way that we could read as they went. My son likes bike riding. He goes on long bike rides of 50 miles, which I think might be 75 kilometers. But basically, what different ways have you gone camping? Please let me know, because I really would like to learn more about what other people's experiences have been. Have I been to Disney? Yes, I have been to Disney a number of times. The first time I went, I was 15, and I went with like a school group, and my son was in marching band. He's now graduated high school, but twice I went with the band because I wanted to see him playing. He plays the saxophone. I wanted to see him playing the saxophone on Main Street in Disney World. So twice I went with the band, and my daughter is now going to join the marching band. So this coming year, she will likely go to Disney World, and I will go with her so I can watch her. She's going to plan to play the saxophone. So Disney World, I do like. It's expensive. The lines are long. It's very commercialized, and it's not cheap. But it's a place to go. I definitely enjoy it. It's beautiful, but very expensive. Do you have certain questions about Disney World? Let me know. I'll let you know. I've been to most of the parks. I've been to Disney World, not Disneyland. And I have been to, I especially love Epcot. So Epcot is like all the different countries, and you can go and eat different foods in different countries. And there's some rides, and it's very, very beautiful. Disney, and that one is like kind of bigger, so it's not as crowded. Magic Kingdom is more crowded. It's more of the princesses. I think there's more rides in it. But the rides are long. You can use the app, but it's confusing. You're looking at the app, and it will say, oh, there's only 20 minutes on this ride. And you rush to that ride. And then there's an hour-long ride. So I'm not too crazy about that. There's ways that you can like book your rides 6 months in advance, but that's kind of confusing. And by the time I figured that all out, I was kind of like leaving. So hello, Luis Garcia. Let me know where you're coming from. We're talking about travel today, and I'd love to know where you're coming from. Let me know. I was just talking about Disney. I've been to Disney World maybe 5 times since I was a teenager. I went 3 times with my son when he was young, and 2 times when he was in band. And I'll plan to go again with my daughter. It's less expensive when you go with the band because you're going with a group. And that's why I would go. Otherwise, I'd rather spend money going someplace else, because I think you can get a whole lot more for your money if you go other places. But that's just me. I have friends that love going to Disney World, and they go every year. Sometimes they go a couple times a year. But it's very, very expensive, in my opinion, and very commercialized. I kind of don't like that part of it. I think it's beautiful, but I'm kind of like mixed feelings on Disney. I love it. It's fun, but it's expensive. It's crowded, and it's very commercialized. So if you are just joining, Luis, especially Luis Garcia, let me know where you're coming from. We're talking about, and Rosella Esposito, thank you. Okay, saying that this is a very interesting topic. Thank you for joining. Please let me know where you're from. I'd love to know. Okay, you're from Colombia, Luis. Thank you. I was just saying that is on my list to go to Colombia. There's a lot of people in Massachusetts where I live that are from Colombia, and I have a very good friend that next time she goes to visit her family in Colombia, I said, I'm going with you. And she said, okay. I'm not sure where she's from. So if you ask me, I don't know what city, but that is on my list to go to Colombia. I'm actually been trying to learn Spanish for more than 20 years. I can understand very well. Speaking is not as good, but I have been to Costa Rica and Mexico, and Colombia is on my list, as well as Spain. I have, it was Antonio that was here from Spain, and that's also on my list. I was planning to go there before the pandemic, but it's definitely on the list. So Kandan says, it's not good that it's commercialized. Yes. I mean, it's like every year it's more expensive, and, you know, I just like, it's really expensive. That's all I can say, but it's fun. It's definitely an experience to do. I'm not going to be one of those people that needs to go to Disney every year. I think for the price to go to Disney, I could go on 4 other vacations. I definitely go when the band is going, because I want to see my kids playing on Main Street, like marching in the parade. But otherwise, I probably would not have gone the last few times. So Colombians are in many parts of the world. Yes, that is true. There are Colombians all over the place. And like I said, there are a lot that live, especially in certain areas in Massachusetts. I think when people move to another country, they'll often move where they know there are other people from their country. So like my family, I have people from Finland, and they moved to Minnesota, actually, because there were a lot of people from Finland that I think went to Minnesota because it's very similar climate, and there was logging. And I think that's why my grandfather and my great-grandfather came here. Vignesh says, because of my doubt, I have lots of students, because lots of students may have visited the camp to come back to camp. What was the experience? Is it related? Okay. So I think you're asking about about camps. So here in the US, we have lots of camps. And like I said, my daughter just went to a 2-week camp. It was supposed to be 1 whole month, but because of COVID, it was cut down to 2 weeks. They had to have less people go to the camp. And it's very much like the camp she goes to is very outdoors-ish. There's like no electronics, no cell phones, none of that. And they just have them doing like swimming, and they have them go boating and all kinds of outdoor things. They got a farm there. Let's see. Vignesh says Kerala and Andhra Pradesh. In this place, I have visited in my childhood time. So thank you for sharing. Thank you so much, Vignesh. So Ganesh said, one of my friends who live in the U.S. has been to Disney recently. I saw it on Facebook post. Yes, I mean, like I said, people go there all the time. It was closed for part of the pandemic, but it's open now. For me, I would also not choose to go now. I would want, if I'm going to Disney and I'm going to spend that kind of money, I would not want to be standing in line with like a mask on my face. Obviously, I will for safety, but it's just like the same as going to Europe. Right now, as Americans, we can go to Europe, but there's restrictions and you can't go as many places. And if I'm going to spend that kind of money, I'm going to want to have a good experience for it. So I think now Disney might be a little bit more open and a little less restrictions, but I would not want to go when there's not going to be the same experience that you would normally have for the kind of money that you'd be spending to go to Disney World. They were closed for maybe 6 months. I don't know exactly, but when they reopened, it was like you had to wear masks everywhere for safety, obviously. But that's not the kind of experience. So I'm hoping when my daughter goes next year in 2022, the band will be going. I'm hoping things will be better and that we will be able to be safe in line without masks. That's my hope. But even if we have to wear masks, I will go because I will want to see her playing the saxophone with the band. So yeah, lots of people went as soon as they opened and went to go back and get in line and go back to Disney. And okay, why people all over the world do not follow COVID precautions? That's a good question. I don't understand that myself. I don't want to get sick. I do not want to get sick, so I definitely follow them all the time. But I don't quite understand why people don't want to follow them. That's a whole nother thing. We could probably have a whole nother live and discuss why people don't want to follow those COVID restrictions. But I don't know. People are stubborn. People don't believe in the whole thing. I'm not exactly sure why. So Florida is especially more so because the governor here in the U.S., each state makes their own rules about what they do for COVID. And the governor has said that there cannot be any requirements to wear masks, and that places can't enforce that. They also said that the cruise lines, right? The cruise lines are not allowed to leave from Florida and require people to be vaccinated. So, I don't understand why. I think I don't understand people if they are not wanting, like for me, I don't want to get sick and I don't want to die, right? So I'm going to wear the mask and I'm going to stay safe. And for this whole time, I have done that. No one in my family has gotten sick, in my immediate family in my house. But I don't understand why people refuse to follow the precautions. But if you are new to join, please hit the like button. Please let me know where you're coming from and where you have traveled. The topic is travel, where you've gone, where you're planning to go. I think we'll talk for another 10, 15 minutes. What places were you planning to go but got kind of put on hold because of the pandemic? So New York is best for taking precautions. Yes, I agree. New York has been really good. And unfortunately, people are stubborn as far as taking the precautions. Okay, Rosella, this is a problem in Italy too. Yes, I mean, I think some people are just sick of taking these precautions. I know, I get into the point I don't want to wear the mask, but I do. Like, I would love to be able to just go out and go into restaurants and go to the grocery stores and go everywhere and not have to put a mask on my face, but I would rather not get sick. So yes, going on vacations, last year we went to New Hampshire, and every place we went, we had, even outside, we were wearing the mask if we were really close to people. And I brought my daughter to amusement park. I said, when we're in line, because my daughter right now in the US under 12, you cannot get the vaccine. So I said, when we're in line, we're going to wear the mask. But when we're like walking around and people are far away, we can kind of like give our spaces a little break. So any case, I would love to one day visit Monument Valley. It's sort of a magical place to me. That sounds beautiful. Connecticut has so many beaches. Have I been there? Yes, I've been to Connecticut. I haven't been to too many of the beaches, but in Connecticut, I love a place called Mystic. And there's actually a movie, I think it was from the 80s with, it's called Mystic Pizza. And why am I forgetting the name, the very famous actress that was in that movie? But I love going to Mystic. There's a lovely seaport museum there where they have like a seaport of all kinds of old ships. And there's also an aquarium. So that's one of my favorite places to go to in Connecticut. But to drive there to go to the beach, it's a long drive for me. So I go to beaches in Massachusetts. Connecticut, let's see. So Vinesh says, that's a good question, because in my childhood days, I had been in a departure on a train to Delhi. But I'm telling, I came back to my state and booked an airplane. So you went to Delhi by train, but you also went someplace by plane. So what did you like better? Train? I mean, in a train, you have, my experience in traveling by train, there's more room because in the planes, it's really tight. But the train that I went on, you had to pay a lot more money if you wanted to be able to sleep. So I was able to really kind of put my seat back and put my feet up on the train and be more comfortable than on a plane. But because it was very expensive to get a sleeping car, I didn't do that. And it was a really long way. I went by train from Massachusetts to Michigan, and it was 24 hours, while by plane, it's an hour and a half. So this past time, I went by plane. I would love to someday go by train, though, and be able to afford the sleeping car and travel across the country, because it was so beautiful to look out the window and see all the scenery. That part I really liked, but I didn't like kind of, not being able to have like a sleeping car. I think that would be the ideal thing, would be having a sleeping car so you could get comfortable and sleep normally and not be kind of trying to get comfortable in a seat. Trains in India are great and inexpensive. Yes, we don't have a lot of trains in America because everyone likes their cars. So we don't have a lot of choices for trains. And so therefore, it's much more expensive. But I understand in India, in other parts of the world, like Europe and such, like train travel is less expensive and more comfortable, and something that I would love to do someday. And another thing I'd love to do would be like travel across the United States in a train, but have that sleeping car so I could be comfortable. I loved going to the dining car and having them cook on the train and bring food. That was a lot of fun. But if you're new with us, please hit the like and please tell me where you're from and let me know where you have traveled to, where you're planning to travel, where you're planning to go. If there's a place that you were going to go, I had said I was going to go to Spain, but that got kind of put on hold because of the pandemic. I'm planning to go to Colombia with my friend, and I have a friend from Panama, so that's another plan. But those are places I'm planning to go because I want to learn how to speak Spanish. So that's why I'm choosing Spanish-speaking countries. And places I've gone, I have been to 4 countries. I've been to Canada a few times. I've been to Costa Rica. I've been to Finland. And I have been to Mexico. Sometimes I make videos and I say I've been to 3 countries. And I don't know why I keep on forgetting Mexico because that was the most recent place I went to. Let's continue, ma'am. Vignesh says, after I have received from the boarding card an airplane, took it from Delhi, and after a long, I think it means a long layover, I've been a long layover in my state. Okay, well, thank you for sharing that. Plane, I like to look out the window in a plane. I like the window seat because I really love looking down, except when you can only see clouds. But I don't like the crampedness. I think that the plane seats are getting squished and less room in a plane seat, or maybe it's just because I'm an adult now. I'm not sure, but I really do think that there's less room in the plane than in the past. Unless you can spend a lot of money and sit in those first class seats, but I would rather spend money when I get there or go on another vacation than to buy those expensive first class seats. So if you are joining, please hit that like and let me know where you have traveled, where you're going. As I said, I am going camping soon. Oh, Kadash says, do you go apple or strawberry picking? Yes. Where I live, the city I live in is where Johnny Appleseed was born. And we have apple orchards. We have 1 apple orchard left in my city, but we have apple orchards all over the state. It's not quite time to pick apples. Right now, it's strawberry time, and you can go pick strawberries here. In fact, my father has strawberries growing on his in his garden. Apples will be ready sometime in August, and we'll pick them until the end of October. And yes, we go apple picking. We pick a bag of apples. We'll make apple pie. That's a very popular thing to do here in Massachusetts and all over the Northeast. I think in Florida, people, maybe they go orange picking. But here in Massachusetts and Northeast, apples are really popular, and not yet time for apple picking. I think they'll be ready in maybe sometime in August. Apples will be ready. But right now we're talking about traveling. You could travel someplace and pick, like I know people have traveled to Florida and maybe they went orange picking. That could have been one of the things. I know last year we went to New Hampshire, and we took a train that went straight up Mount Washington, which is the tallest mountain in the Northeast United States. And one of 3 trains, I believe, in the world that goes straight up a mountain. It's called a Cog Railroad, where there are the 2 regular wheels, right? But in the middle is one that is shaped like a gear. And that's how it really pulls that train up the mountain, and how they slow it down from just going super fast down the mountain. So it's called the Cog Railroad. I've been up that one twice. I've been up the Cog Railroad in Pikes Peak, Colorado, where I was born. I wasn't born on Pikes Peak Mountain, but I was born in Colorado Springs, where Pikes Peak is. And I believe the other Cog Railroad is somewhere in Switzerland. That I'm talking about a train that goes straight up the mountain. We did that last year, and because we did it during COVID, we had to wear masks in the train. But that's where we went on vacation last year, was to New Hampshire, to what we call the White Mountains. And we camped, we stayed in a hotel. We stayed in a hotel very close to Mount Washington. And other things we did, well, a lot of things weren't open. There was, let's see, have you visited the White House? I did. Once I did visit the White House. I don't think they have too many tours there now. But when I was in high school or middle school, they had a trip to Washington. We were supposed to go to the White House, but there was not enough time. But when I was I think right after college, I booked a trip to Washington, and you could go to the White House and to visit the Senate if you contacted your representative from your representative and asked for tickets ahead of time, and it was free. But I think for like security reasons, I don't think they have trips or tours of the White House anymore. I'm not 100% sure on that. It was pretty cool, but you only see a small part of the White House. Washington, D.C. is a really cool place. There is the Smithsonian Museum, which is all free. And it's very, like, they have one on aerospace. They have African American history. They have Holocaust Museum. They have, let's see, they have the Native American Museum. So they have all these different museums, and they're all free, and the monuments are all free. Hotels in Washington, D.C. are super expensive, but you can stay right outside of Washington, D.C., and they're not as expensive. And you can take the subway around to get to different places, but everything that you want to see is right there. Like if you're walking from the Senate to the White House, it's in walking distance. Vignesh says, in my childhood time, I had been traveling from Delhi by train. Then after long, I came back from my state by airplane. So, okay, so you went first by train and then you came back by airplane. Actually, a little bit off topic, one of my favorite movies is called Planes, Trains, and Automobiles with John Candy and Steve Martin. Super funny. Might be a good one to watch if you're learning English too. And super funny. You'll laugh a lot. But I have traveled in all those different ways. Trains, planes. I've traveled not across the country, but I've traveled in Midwest Utah, Arizona, Nevada, Colorado by car. I traveled from Massachusetts to Michigan by car. I drove myself. As I said earlier, 16 hours if you go through Canada, above the Great Lakes. And if you go below the Great Lakes through the United States, it's 20 hours by driving. 24 hours to take the train from Massachusetts to Michigan. Too long and uncomfortable. And I just went last week. I went by plane. It was an hour and a half. I think it was longer when I was younger. Maybe the planes have gotten faster. I'm not sure. So we will go for a couple more minutes. If anybody wants to let me know where they're coming from, if you haven't hit the like button, please do so. But I'd love to know where people have gone to, where they're planning to go. If you have questions about the U.S., I haven't gone everywhere, but I've gone to all of the New England states, which are Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. Those are the New England states. Do I know the Amazon founder, Jeff Bezos? Yes, he just went to space last week, right? Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know if that's like really good for these billionaires to go to space. I think it might be not good for the environment. I mean, it was kind of cool, but I kind of feel like all these billionaires going to space, maybe that's not good for the environment, but maybe kind of cool. I don't know. But there also was this woman that wanted to go to space back in the time of when people went to the moon, and she wasn't able to go to space. And she actually just went to space in one of those. I don't know if it was Jeff Bezos one or the other one. I know Elon Musk is also doing ones to space. And Vignesh says, because you have been visited to the countries, have you ever tasted the food? I think food, right? So I tried food in all the countries. Let's see, Finland, they ate a lot of fish, a lot of like smoked fish I didn't like, but they had like a salmon stew that I liked. Mexico, I liked the food, and I tried everything. Like my friend would say, I had to try it or I had to prove it, because in Spanish, like probar is to try. So I tried the food. I liked it, but I did get sick once in Mexico when I ate food that was like being cooked on the beach. And after that, I kind of just was eating bananas and yogurt after that. I didn't want to try all the seafood. Where I went to Acapulco, seafood is very, very popular. When I went to Costa Rica, there was a lot of rice and beans, or what else do they do? A lot of like chicken and rice, like arroz con pollo. I love that. So I did try the food in Costa Rica. I like that. Canadian food is just like United States food. They got Chinese food restaurants, you know, hamburgers, steak, and all those restaurants. It's the same thing. And then where else? I think that's all the places I've been to. And yeah, I did like the food. Some of the food I didn't like. Finland, they eat a lot of fish and a lot of like smoked fish or pickled fish, and I don't like that. But I did like something called salmon stew, and I do make that. And I am part Finnish, hence the blonde hair and blue eyes. So I make something called pulla bread, which no one taught me, but I decided to just learn how to make that because I am part Finnish and I like making bread. And here's my cat again. I guess he wanted to come and, you know, say goodbye to everybody because we've been going for almost an hour and 5 minutes. And here's Ross again, and he just jumped up, I think, to say goodbye. Thank you, everyone. Please hit the like. And I might go live one more time before I go camping, maybe next Saturday. And then I don't know if I'll be able to go live at the beach. I don't know how the internet will be, but if I can, I will go live at the beach if internet, you know, basically, you know, on my cell phone, because that's all I'm bringing to the beach. But if I'm able to, I'd love to do that. But if not, I'll post some videos, and please watch those as well and share them with your friends that are learning English. Please do that. Please share the channel. We want to help more and more people. So thank you so much for joining me, and be sure to join next week. Let me know in the comments topic ideas. Today we talked about travel. If you have any idea for topics, please let me know. I definitely will kind of think of something and probably post what the topic will be sometime today or tomorrow. Thank you so much, and thanks for watching.